What's up, everybody? We're just going to get right to it. Today, we're going to be going over Lesson 6, which is about theme, and we're also going to be reading this new text called Ruthless by William DeMille. I think that's how you pronounce it. So let's get started. So the objective for today is simply just to analyze theme in a fiction story. So what is theme? Theme is the message that a reader takes away from a story. And in other words, it usually provides a sort of life lesson that's useful outside of the text and in the real world. And there are always many themes in the story, depending on your interpretation. So some steps to finding theme. The first thing you want to go over is to read the text to make sure that you're reading through it as much as you can, making sure you're getting important details and such. Number 2, identify the plot, the conflict, and the characters. What the plot basically saying, what is the main summary of the story. The conflict being, of course, what's the dilemma. And the characters, of course, you want to know who your characters are. And number 3, how does the story conclude? How does the story end? This is always really important when you're looking for theme, because this is usually when everything seems to kind of connect together and you end up finding the main lesson of the story. And number 4, how does the plot, conflict, and characters connect to the title/subject? And lastly, what is the author trying to tell me? In other words, what is a possible theme? So let's read Ruthless by William DeMille. Outside, the woods lay basking in clear October sunlight, trees a riot of color, air full of autumn's tango, and the sharp, exciting smell of moist, leaf-covered earth. Inside, a man smiled grimly as he turned from the bathroom cabinet, entered the expensively primitive living room of his mountain camp, and crossed to a closet set in the pine wall. It was his special closet, with a spring lock, and in it he kept guns, ammunition, fishing rods, tackle, and liquor. Not even his wife was allowed to have a key, for Judson Webb loved his personal possessions and felt a sense of deep outrage if they were touched by any hand but his own. The closet's door stood open. He had been packing his things away for the winter, and in a few minutes would be driving back to civilization. As he looked at the shelf which the liquor stood, his smile was not attractive. All the bottles were unopened except 1 quart of bourbon, which was placed invitingly in front, a whiskey glass by its side. This bottle was less than half full. As he took it from the shelf, his wife spoke from the adjoining bedroom. "I'm all packed, Judson," she said. "Hasn't Alec come to turn the water off and get the keys?" Alec lived about a mile down the road and acted as a caretaker for the city folks when they were away. "He's down at the lake taking the boats out of water. Said he'll be back in half an hour." Marcia came into the room carrying her suitcase, but she paused in surprise as she saw the bottle in her husband's hand. "Judson!" she exclaimed. "You're not taking a drink at 10 o'clock in the morning?" "You're wrong, my dear," he chuckled. "I'm not taking anything out of this bottle. I'm merely putting a little kick into it." His closed hand opened, and he put upon the table 2 tiny white pellets as he started to uncork the whiskey. Her eyes narrowed as she watched him. She had learned to dread that tone of his voice. It was the tone he used when he was planning to put something over in a business deal. "Whoever broke into my closet last winter and stole my liquor will probably try it again once we're out of here," he went on. "Only this time he'll wish he hadn't." She caught her breath at the cruel vindictiveness of his manner, as one by one he dropped the tablets into the bottle and held it up to watch them dissolve. "What are they?" she asked. "Something to make him sick?" "And how?" He seemed fascinated as he saw the genial bourbon change into lethal dose. "At least no one has found an antidote. Once it's down in his curtains." He corked his bottled vengeance and set it back on the shelf alongside the little whiskey glass. "Everything nice and handy," he remarked approvingly. "Now, Mr. Thief, when you break in, drink hearty. I won't begrudge you this one." The woman's face was pale. "Don't do it, Judson," she gasped. "It's horrible. It's murder." The law doesn't call it murder if I shoot a thief who's entering my house by force, he said harshly. Also, the use of rat poison is quite legal. The only way any rat can get into this closet is to break in. What happens then is his affair, not mine. Don't do it, Judson, she begged. The law doesn't punish burglary by death. So what right have you... When it comes to protecting my property, I make my own laws. His deep voice suggested a big dog growling at threatened loss of a bone. But all they did was steal a little liquor, she pleaded. Probably some boys off a lark. They didn't do any real damage. That's not the point, he said. If a man holds me up and robs me of $5, it makes me just as sore as if he took 100. A thief's a thief. She made one last effort. We won't be here till the next spring. I can't bear to think of that death trap waiting here all the time. Suppose something happens to us, and no one knows. He chuckled once more at her words. We'll take a chance on that, he said. I've made my piles by taking chances. If I should die, you can do as you please. The stuff will be yours. It was useless to argue, she knew. He had always been ruthless in business, and whenever anything crossed him, things had to be done this way. She turned toward the outer door with a sigh of defeat. I'll walk down the road and say goodbye to the farmhouse, she said quietly. You can pick me up there. She had made up her mind to tell Alex's wife. Someone had to know. Okay, my dear, he smiled genially. And don't worry about the poor, abused little burglar. No one's going to get hurt who hasn't got it coming to them. As she went down the path, he started to close the closet door, then paused as he remembered his hunting boots drying outside on the porch. They belonged in the closet, so leaving the door open, he went to fetch them from the heavy rustic table on which they stood, along with his bag and topcoat. Alec was coming up from the lake and waved at him from a distance. A chipmunk, hearing Judson's heavy tread, abandoned the acorn he was about to add to his store within the cabin wall and disappeared like an electric bulb burning out. Judson, reaching for his boots, stepped fearingly upon the acorn, and his foot slid under him and his head struck the massive table as he fell. Several minutes later, he began to regain his senses. Alec's strong arm was supporting his as he lay on the porch, and a kindly voice was saying, "'Twarn't much of a fall, Mr. Webb. You aren't even cut none. Just knocked out for a minute. Here, take this. It'll pull you together." A small whiskey glass was pressed onto his lips. Dazed and half-conscious, he drank. So in order to start looking for the theme, what we want to do is we want to use these devices. First, we want to use plot, conflict, characters, conclusion, connection to title/subject, and the theme. So, what I got for the plot: a man named Judson Webb and his wife Marcia are leaving their mountain camp for the upcoming winter. Judson, however, is overbearing of his possessions, so he attempts to create a death trap for anyone who attempts to invade his stuff while they are gone. So this doesn't necessarily tell me what the ending is. This doesn't give any spoilers. This kind of gives me a little overview of what the story is about. As for conflict, the death trap Judson creates includes 2 white pills of rat poison and a half bottle of whiskey in case a robber wants to drink it. Marcia, however, believes death may be too harsh for merely a robber. So this is a little more specific than the plot. The plot, I'm just giving a little overview, whereas the conflict, I'm getting a little more specific as to, what exactly the problem is. And, of course, for the characters, we got Judson Webb, we got Marcia Webb, we got Alec, and we got Alec's wife. So for conclusion, we got, of course, Judson trips on an acorn, he becomes unconscious, he's woken up by his friend Alec, who attempts to make him feel better with whiskey. Oops. Yeah, so we got our conclusion right here. And lastly, the last thing before we're looking for the theme, of course, is the connection to the title/the subject. So, for the connection to the title, we know that the title is Ruthless, and this connects in the sense that Judson is shown to be ruthless in his actions by attempting to set up a death trap for someone who wouldn't have done a crime who would not have done a crime harsh enough to deserve death. And of course, when we put it all together, we look for the theme. Okay, so finally we got basically two themes together. Two of them we could work with. Remember that there are several themes that you can come up with, and here's a few that I came up with. So the first one would be one who takes extreme revenge will be punished. And number two, if people don't consider all paths, there will be consequences. So both of these themes are similar in the sense that, you know, Judson wanted to accept revenge on someone who once robbed him before, but since he wants to do it in a little more cruel way, he wants to basically kill them. That's kind of showing that, he's not in the right for that. And of course, since he was given the whiskey after he passed out, that just shows that, he's punished for, trying to exact harsh revenge on somebody who just merely robbed him.